Hi, my name's Kate Latimer, and I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor with Santa Fe Community College Counseling Services, where we provide free and confidential counseling for students experiencing personal challenges affecting their academic success. I've been working as a counselor in nonprofit and educational settings for nearly a decade now. Before SFCC, I specialized in trauma treatment at Solace Crisis Treatment Center here in Santa Fe. My work at Solace included direct services to clients who'd experienced trauma from military combat, sexual assault, domestic violence, and other stressful events. I primarily treated post-traumatic stress disorder as well as other stress-related disorders, and also provided education and prevention training for various first responder groups, including the New Mexico National Guard, firefighters, and local law enforcement agencies in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Las Cruces. Today, I'll be sharing some stress management strategies with you. Academic success depends greatly on managing stress, which when it comes down to it is more about managing ourselves while navigating the stressors or challenging life events that come up in our lives. Let's start by talking about what stress is and how it affects us. Stress is essentially our response to life events that challenge us. Events that create stress for you might not create stress for me, and vice versa. This means our experience of stress is very subjective and depends greatly on our level of resilience, problem solving, and ability to manage our emotions or emotionally regulate ourselves. Generally, stress is considered a bad thing, something to avoid, or something that can actually even be detrimental to our health. If you watch TV or listen to the radio, you've probably heard a lot about how bad stress is for you. It creates muscle tension, which can exacerbate or lead to chronic pain conditions. It messes with our digestion, our sleep, our mood. It affects our sex drive and fertility. It lowers our immune system, exacerbates asthma, eczema, and other medical conditions. It can make your hair turn gray, and it can even make your hair fall out. And ultimately, stress can cause a heart attack and kill you. This is all true and very important to be aware of so that we can work to keep our stress levels down. But I have something else for you to consider. Is all stress really bad for you? Well, the answer is obviously no. And this is something that athletes, particularly bodybuilders, have known for eons. Bodybuilders get stronger by stressing the muscles in their bodies by lifting heavy weight. As a reasonably healthy person who works out fairly regularly, if I go to the gym and do one set of 15 bicep curls using a 1-pound weight, what's likely to happen? Not a lot. Alternately, if I haven't been to the gym in 6 months and then suddenly show up and do 3 sets of 15 reps using a 20-pound weight, I might not be able to use my arms the next day, or worse, I might hurt myself by pulling or tearing a muscle. Performance, therefore, is linked to how little or how much stress we experience. What you're looking at now is a stress curve showing the relationship between performance on the y-axis and stress levels on the x-axis. As you can see, too little stress or stress underload inhibits performance. Under optimum conditions, stress drives us to perform better. However, if the stressors exceed optimum levels, we can become exhausted, overloaded, and eventually, if the stress continues to overwhelm us, we break down and burn out. This curve is going to look different for each person. What I find stressful might not be a big deal to you, and vice versa. If we were to all go to the gym and sign up with the same personal trainer, chances are that that trainer, if they're any good, would spend some time with each of us and develop a personalized plan to optimize our workout. Stress management is very similar. There's no magical formula that works for everyone. And stress management isn't really even about managing our stress, since we can't control everything in our environment. It's actually about managing ourselves within that environment. So in order to better manage ourselves, we need to know what to look out for in terms of signs and symptoms of stress overload. When we overload at the gym, our body lets us know. We might get out of breath, feel dizzy, get nauseous, and the next day we will feel sore, tight, or fatigued. With stress, the body will also give us feedback if we're paying attention. We can look at body, mind, emotions, and behavior to get clues about our levels of stress and get curious about our particular tells that let us know we have crossed the threshold from productive to unproductive stress. Take a moment to consider what happens to you personally when you're overloaded with stressors. Perhaps you have more physical symptoms like headaches. Maybe you get sick more often, suffer from colds or flus. Maybe you experience more muscle tension, more fatigue. You might have reduced or increased sex drive, and you might have a loss or increase of appetite. I really wish I was the kind of person that had a loss of appetite when I was under stress, but I tend to reach for the chocolate and the French fries when I'm under a lot of stress, so I get an increased appetite. Mentally, maybe you notice that you worry more, that you have difficulty thinking, maybe your judgment it gets impaired, or you struggle with indecision, nightmares, have difficulty sleeping, or just overall experience more negativity mentally. Emotionally, we can experience things like sadness, irritability, anxiety, depression, shame and guilt, or loneliness. All of these things being, not so much negative emotions, but we could think of these emotions as ways that our bodies, minds, and spirits draw attention to the fact that we're under more stress, and these emotions can help us be more aware. If we're experiencing more irritability or feeling more depressed, then maybe that's a time that we need to look at changing something in our lives. And then finally, behaviors. Behaviors that can be signs of stress overload tend to be more impulsive behaviors, or you might find yourself to be more accident prone, restless. You might isolate or withdraw socially. And then we're also going to expect to see an increase in substance abuse and other addictive behaviors like gambling, shopping, there's sex and love addiction, all kinds of process addictions, things that we do somewhat compulsively to take the edge off of our stress, for better or worse. Next, I'm going to show you an image, and I want you to pay attention to the first thought that comes to your mind. Ready? Did you think, this guy's in trouble? He can't possibly lift that. Or did you think, hey, he's almost there, he can do it? Or did you think, wow, that is totally photoshopped? Your initial response might give you a clue about how you think about stress in your life. In a TED Talk from Kelly McGonigal titled How to Make Stress Your Friend, she cites research that shows the biggest factor impacting how bad stress is for you is whether or not you think it's bad for you. The study monitored 30,000 adults over 8 years and asked, how much stress have you had in the last year, and do you believe stress is bad for you, yes or no? Then 8 years later, they looked up public death records to see who had died. People who said they had a lot of stress in the past year were 43% more likely to die, but only if they answered yes to the question, do you believe stress is bad for you? Those who had had a lot of stress and answered no, they didn't believe stress was bad for you, had the lowest risk of dying, even lower than those who reported low stress levels. The researchers who did the study estimated that during the 8 years of their study, 182,000 people in the U.S. had died from the belief that stress is bad for you. So what did you see here in this rather badly photoshopped picture? Did you see imminent failure? Did you see possible success? Is the glass half empty or half full? Your reaction might tell you something about the way you're thinking about stress. Henry Ford reportedly once said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. What are the implications of this, do you think, when it comes to stress? As you may know, when we're in a life-threatening situation, our autonomic nervous system gets activated and we experience what we call the flight, fight, freeze response. Physiological changes occur that are designed to help us to run away and escape, stand our ground and fight, or literally drop into a dead faint, while adrenal hormones flood our system and allow us a painless death. These are all very helpful if you're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. But we're no longer living in Neolithic times, and the experience of stress that we have today is usually not life-threatening. Today we experience stress while paying our bills, negotiating a divorce, or taking an exam. And these responses that we have that are biologically set up for fight, flight, or freeze do not help us solve those kinds of complex problems. In fact, when we're in the midst of an autonomic stress response, we actually cannot access our prefrontal cortex and do the executive decision making that we need to do to pay our bills or deal with an interpersonal problem. And in effect, we become sort of like mindless reptiles who only have 3 options: to run, hide, or fight. So if this happens to us, we need to be able to do something to calm our system down so we quite literally don't lose our minds. I want to note here that it is often our perception of a situation that will initiate the autonomic nervous system activation. We can experience the fight, flight, or freeze flooding of adrenaline if we think our life is in danger, regardless of whether it actually is. And we can actually experience that same flooding when we witness great bodily harm or injury to another person due to the phenomenon of what are called mirror neurons. Often just witnessing or observing someone else's experience has a very similar effect on our nervous system. Being around people who are highly agitated or in pain actually takes a physical toll on our own experience and our own system. This is why the DSM-5, which is the manual for mental health professionals to use for mental health diagnosis, specifically states that the criteria for PTSD includes having experienced a life-threatening situation or perceived life-threatening situation or witnessing great injury or bodily harm or the death of another human being or someone close to us. In other words, there's acknowledgement among psychology professionals that our perception of a stressor, our state of mind, impacts our levels of stress. So the question is, how do we maintain a state of mind that will help our nervous system stay calm? And what can we do if we start to literally lose our minds, our connection to the frontal cortex and executive functioning when facing an autonomic activation? Especially when what we see on the news or read in the media is focused so much on catastrophe, when even though our lives may not be in immediate danger, we're exposed to images from all over the world depicting death and destruction on a daily basis. When our own lives, while perhaps not facing imminent harm, may be in a struggle that can feel life-threatening. Has anyone ever said to you, just relax, or don't worry about it? I personally think, well, they may mean well, this is one of the most annoying things someone can say. It's not helpful to tell someone what to do without telling them how to do it. How many of us have been formally taught how to relax and de-stress? Is this something we get taught in school? Not usually. Usually we learn how to cope with stress in our family of origin. How did members of your family deal with stress? Perhaps in your family, people yelled and slammed doors, drank alcohol, argued, threw things, or hurt each other physically. These are not such great strategies. And if no one in our family can teach us ways to relax, we need to find our own way. So right now, I'm going to share with you some simple skills we can use to help us let go of tension and stress so we can actually relax. Are you ready? This slide should really read exhale, inhale, repeat. Sometimes when we're really stressed, it can be difficult to get a full breath in, even though people always say, take a deep breath. We actually want to be focusing more on the exhale. We actually fall asleep on an exhale, and when we physically die, it's on an exhale. And I'm not saying this to freak you out. In many Eastern spiritual systems, death is seen as the ultimate release from suffering or stress. And in death, it's believed that we let go and surrender to a higher universal truth. But we don't have to die to experience this. I'm definitely not advocating suicide as a pathway to stress relief, but I am suggesting that using an exhale to let go of stress is a way to harness biological processes that can reset the nervous system and return us to homeostasis. Sighing, laughing, and crying are also ways that we release stress with our exhalations. And you may have had an experience of laughing or crying in an inappropriate time. And part of that, the reason for that is that this is a way that we discharge adrenal energy. However, society tells us, not to do those things, right? You're not supposed to laugh at a funeral. You're not supposed to, cry, especially, depending on gender roles and things like that. But actually, when we do this, we're suppressing natural mechanisms for release of stress. And likewise, you might have noticed that when we're scared or surprised by something, that we inhale. Our natural response to something scary or surprising is usually, right? We take a deep breath in, and then maybe we exhale or laugh, ha, 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 oh, you really scared me there. I didn't see you behind the door, that kind of thing. So let's practice, and perhaps you'll see what I mean. I'm going to teach you a breathing technique, but before we get into that, we're just going to start by noticing the breath without changing it for a few cycles of inhalations and exhalations. So a complete breath includes both an inhale and an exhale. So just take a moment to notice your breathing, which you're already doing and you've been doing, I will assume. And just take note of where you're breathing. Are you breathing into your belly, your chest, your throat? Is your breathing deep and full, shallow and rapid? This is something that we're usually doing automatically, but we can actually consciously attend to and have an effect on our stress levels. So we're going to begin now by focusing on and lengthening the exhalations, pushing all the air out of the lungs a little more consciously than you normally would. And after you do that a few times, after a few exhalations, you might notice that the inhalations naturally and automatically get fuller, deeper, and even slower as you continue to focus on the exhale. What I love about breathing as a stress reduction technique is that it's free. We already know how to do it, and we can do it anywhere. So as we move into this technique, I'm going to explain it first and then we'll practice. We're going to begin to even out and slow down the breath by counting to 4 on the exhale, then pausing with an open airway for 4 counts, then inhaling again 4 counts, and then pausing for 4 counts. On the pause, it's important to keep your airways open and suspended rather than holding your breath like you would jumping into a swimming pool, closing off your airway. I want you to practice keeping your airway open and suspended. So you can begin on an inhale or an exhale and just count to 4 as you complete that inhale or exhale. So it might sound like this. Inhaling, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause with an open airway, 4, 3, 2, 1, and continue to repeat, counting to 4 for the inhale, the pause, the exhale, and the pause. So each step is a 4 count. So take a few moments to practice counting your breath, evening out the breath, counteracting the autonomic response, which will increase our rate of respiration, and bringing us back to homeostasis with even, full, complete breaths. Let's do one more cycle, counting to 4, pause, inhaling or exhaling wherever you are, pause. And it really can be that simple. Feeling calm, centered, and spiritually at peace now? If not, never fear. I have some other techniques that I will share with you in case the breathing didn't work out. But for now, let's turn our attention to the actual causes of stress. These are life events that we call stressors. Stress management, or what I said before is really better called self-management, includes taking stock of current life events and situations that contribute to high stress levels. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to pause this presentation and write down all the stressors you yourself are dealing with right now. You can grab a pen and paper or open up a Word document, any way that you want to record the things that you need to do, your responsibilities, your commitments, concerns, family obligations, tasks, upcoming and current things. And let's see what we're dealing with. When you're done, you can come back to the presentation. Go ahead and pause now and resume the presentation once you've made your list. More than likely, the stressors that you wrote down are going to fall into one of these 6 categories. It is certainly not unusual for college students to experience academic stress with homework demands and exams, and taking up a lot of time doing assignments and things like that can be a major source of anxiety. However, community college students often experience additional psychosocial stressors such as work and family-related challenges that then add to the stress of going to school. Some examples of social stressors might be, various social obligations and commitments, church, and if you're leading your kids' brownie or Boy Scout group or something like that. And then physical stressors are things like long-term and short-term illness, having an injury, having a disability, or even just having allergies. Some of these things can be chronic and can become very normalized, and we may not realize that having allergies or eczema or diabetes or something like that can take its toll. And certainly not all stressors are necessarily going to be bad things. Anything that disrupts our normal routine can be a stressor, even if it disrupts us in a good way. For example, moving into a new home, getting married, having a baby, starting a new career. All of these things are positive, but they can create stress. Now, sometimes just thinking about the stressors that we're dealing with can raise the alarm for the nervous system a little bit. And that can leave us feeling a little bit funky. So we're going to take this opportunity to learn another stress management technique called progressive muscle relaxation. So we can feel a little more like this. Okay, so progressive muscle relaxation. This is a technique that is used all over the country, actually probably internationally, in hospitals and clinics, particularly with folks recovering from heart attack, but also other stress-related injuries and illnesses. It's a way to release pain and tension in the body on a very physical level. It was developed in the 1920s by a doctor by the name of Edmund Jacobson, and it formed really the ideological basis for what now has become something called biofeedback, if you're familiar with biofeedback. Progressive muscle relaxation is a process of progressively moving through different muscle groups in the body and consciously tightening and releasing those muscle groups. As we get into this, please make sure to avoid tensing or tightening to the point of any pain or discomfort. It's not necessary to go all out here. You can just, the main thing is to sense the difference between tension and relaxation in the muscles. So we don't have to go too far with that, just enough to feel the difference. You're going to want to avoid tightening any areas of injury and really listen to your body with this, okay? I don't want you to like cramp up that you're holding so tightly, okay? The point ultimately is to work with the tension in the body that's already there rather than just say, okay, 1, 2, 3, relax, right? So we're going to actually build the tension and then release the tension. So if you're ready, go ahead and you might push your chair back away from the computer if you're sitting, or just make yourself comfortable however you want to do this. I find it easiest to do this like in a seated position on a chair, but you could do it lying down if you wanted to. So get yourself ready. Make sure you have, you're free of distractions. And we're going to begin by breathing in, and as we breathe in, we're going to tighten the muscles in the feet, and you can do that by curling your toes inside your shoes if you're wearing shoes, or just curling up your toes and holding for the inhale, and then go ahead and exhale and gently release your feet. So bringing your feet back to a neutral position. And then do that one more time. Inhale, squeezing the toes, curling them up inside your shoes. And then go ahead and exhale to release. Do that one more time. Inhaling, tightening, squeezing the muscles of the feet. And then when you're ready, exhale and release. The next one is the calf muscles, and we're going to tighten the calf muscles by pressing the balls of our feet into the floor, lifting our heels away from the ground or off the ground, and flexing the muscles in the calves. Go ahead and take a deep breath in, and then with the exhale, we'll let go, slowly bringing the heels back down to the floor. We'll do that 2 more times. Tightening or tensing the calf muscles again, not to the point of cramping, not to the point of discomfort, just to the point of feeling on that inhale, breathing in, squeezing the muscles, and then exhale, release. And one more time, inhaling, tightening, and exhaling, releasing. Next, we'll do the thigh muscles, the quadricep muscles. If you're sitting, you can just extend your legs out in front of you, lifting your feet off of the floor, tightening the quadriceps, thigh muscles. Inhale, and with the exhale, let those feet come back down to the floor. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhale, extending the legs out in front. Squeeze, and exhale, release. One more time. Inhale. It's almost as if you were trying to push your feet against the wall in front of you. And exhale, releasing down. Let's do the hands now. Squeezing the hands into fists, tightening on the inhale. And on the exhale, Releasing, letting the hands open. And on the inhale, one more time, squeezing the hands into fists, tight, tight. And then releasing on the exhale. And one more time, inhaling, tightening, squeezing the hands. And when you're ready, exhale and release. This time we're going to involve the upper arm muscles. So we're going to make our hands into fists and then squeeze our fists up towards our shoulders, effectively engaging the bicep muscles. Let's inhale, squeeze, and exhale, releasing, letting your hands fall back down towards your lap or towards the floor. And we'll do that again on the inhale, tightening, squeezing. And exhale, letting go. One more time for those biceps, upper arms, squeezing fists to shoulders. Inhale. And exhale, release. From here, we're going to push the arms back behind us as if we were trying to touch the wall behind us. Using an inhalation, we're squeezing the shoulder blades together. We're lifting the arms back as high as they'll go towards the wall behind. Inhale. And exhale, release. And let's do that again. Inhaling, lifting, reaching back behind. And then release. One more inhale. Tightening, reaching back behind, squeezing the shoulder blades together. And then exhale, coming back to neutral. Now we're moving to the shoulders a little bit more. We're going to lift the shoulders up towards our ears, like shrugging our shoulders. But we're going to hold there on the inhale. Not too tight. I don't want you to get a neck cramp. Exhale and release. And two more times. Inhale, lifting shoulders up towards the ears. And exhale, gently releasing, letting those shoulder blades slide down the back of the body. And one more time. Inhale. Squeezing the shoulders up. And exhale, release. Great. Now we're going to put all of that together. So we're going to squeeze the toes, the calves, the thighs. We're going to draw the hands into fists, lift our shoulders towards our ears, squeeze the fists up towards the shoulders, and take a breath in. And then on the exhale, go ahead and gently release. So we've progressed from isolated muscle groups. Now we're doing all the muscle groups at one. Full body. Inhale. Tightening, squeezing feet, hands, legs, arms, chest, back. And release. And one more time. Inhale to tighten, squeezing everything inward towards the bones, even your face can tighten, and then relax. This is a great way to work with chronic muscle tension when the body gets stuck in a place of muscular electromagnetic stress. Using this technique really works with that stress and teaches the body how to return to a place of relaxation. So I hope you're feeling a little more relaxed now. Next, we're going to look at some stress management strategies that are not generally helpful, but that many of us do unconsciously use. So Sigmund Freud here, often considered the father of modern psychotherapy, came up with a list of a bunch of ways that humans cope with stress. He called them defense mechanisms. And here are a few of those, a few of his, and a few that I threw in too. Denial. Very simply, ignoring or refusing to acknowledge the reality of a stressful situation. Displacement, taking our stress out on something else or someone else. Repression, keeping the stress bottled up inside and not talking about it, even sometimes trying not to think about it. And then we have procrastination, avoiding or delaying a task due to uncertainty, fear of failure, or overwhelm. And social withdrawal, isolating oneself from friends and family or limiting contact with others. Often this has to do with shame or not wanting to be a burden on someone. I imagine we can all relate to, at some point, engaging in stress eating, eating high fat, high sugar, high salt foods to temporarily relieve emotional distress. And then, more intensively self-medicating or numbing using alcohol or another substance as a way to cope with stress. First responders and medical personnel have some of the worst records for alcohol and drug abuse compared to other professions. We know that self-medicating with whatever substance is hugely popular in terms of a stress management technique, but I'm sure I don't need to tell you that it's very ineffective and, in fact, can create more problems like hangovers, DUIs, ill health effects, and not to mention, relationship and financial problems. The urge to use alcohol and drugs, it can be a major indicator that more effective stress management skills could be utilized. So let's actually talk about some more effective ways that we might be able to cope with stress. Oh, and let's not forget, it's not like we just use one stress management strategy. We can do all of the above. While perhaps offering temporary relief, it can do more harm than good. So again, let's see if we can come up with some better ideas. So this is what I call the 4 A's of stress management. And when facing a stressful situation, we always, and I really use that word carefully, have 4 choices or options available to us. As we go through these 4 A's of stress management, think about how you might apply them to the situations that you wrote down earlier. And you might find some new possibilities for managing stress. So we're going to start with avoid. Avoiding means leaving or finding a way out of a situation. An example of avoiding is the classic joke where the patient goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, it hurts when I do this." And the doctor replies, "Well, stop doing that." If you can avoid it, sometimes that's your best bet. But it's not always that simple, right? I mean, sometimes it is, but often, even though we could choose to avoid a situation, there may be a reason that we don't want to, especially with like family issues. Our spouse or our kids may really push us to our limits, and we might consider something like divorce or giving them up for adoption, but ultimately that would create more stress. So we look at other possible solutions and choices. And while it's possible, it might not be desirable to say walk out on your family or not show up for work or quit going to school. There's probably a reason that you need to stay involved. However, we might choose to avoid an argument by going for a walk or cooling down and then coming back to the issue when we're more calm. So, while it's a good idea to ultimately avoid altogether an abusive or dangerous situation, you can also temporarily avoid something by leaving and then coming back to it. But we don't want avoiding to turn into denial, right? Like you don't want to just leave and pretend it's not there. If you need to take a break, you then do that, but come back and address the situation. So as you review the stressors that you put down, maybe there are some you might be able to simply avoid and just let go of. And if not, we can look to the next stress management strategy, which is altering the situation. That means doing something to actually change the situation. If you're stressed at work, you might use communication skills to assert yourself or persuade your boss or coworker to behave differently to alleviate your stress. You might ask for help. You might find a compromise, adjust the workload, or initiate some kind of time management strategy to change things about the stressor. When stressors like poverty or injustice or inequality are disrupting society, it's important to work to alter those situations. When stress can be resolved by changing the environment, it is advantageous to do so and will likely benefit everyone involved. So it's really important to look at those social issues or systemic issues that might be creating stress for not just one person, but many. So it's a good strategy to see if we can alter. But it's not always possible to alter things, especially, major issues like racism and violence in our communities. So we also need to know to adapt to a situation, perhaps even while we work towards change. So that looks like changing our internal experience rather than the external one. And we usually do this by changing our thoughts or our behaviors, such as through the use of coping skills to reduce our distress. And coping strategies are numerous. I mean, there's so many things that we can do. I've already mentioned going for a walk. We can exercise. We can look at diet. We can make sure we get enough sleep. All kinds of hobbies and recreational activities can be a way of coping, going to a yoga class, meditating, playing a sport, getting a massage, soaking in the hot tub, or taking a bubble bath. I mean, all of these kinds of things, riding motorcycles or ATVs or, whatever you do to de-stress, decompress, go fishing, go camping, spend time in nature. The list goes on and on and on. And some of those coping strategies that I mentioned have actually been clinically studied. And we know that, like, for example, spending time in nature can reduce blood pressure and help remove cortisol from the system and really has some great de-stress effects, and obviously so does getting enough sleep. So really important to look at adapting as a strategy when we cannot avoid or change our stressful situation. And then finally, we have accepting. Acceptance really means being at peace with what is. It means cooperating with reality instead of fighting it. And this usually requires some level of letting go of judgment or our desire for something to be different so that we can use the experience to our advancement and perhaps shift into a consciousness of gratitude or an attitude of gratitude and forgive others, other people or things, instead of condemning them when they don't behave to suit us, right? So these are those things that I sometimes think of it as, is it my business? Because then I need to adapt. Is it someone else's business? Because I don't need to be in anybody else's business. I'm not going to try to change other people. I'm only going to change myself. And then there are other things that, if you believe in a God or a higher power, it's like, that's God's business. That's higher power's business. I don't get to control things like the weather. If it's going to rain on my parade, I better accept that and then adapt by bringing an umbrella or a raincoat, right? Dressing warmly. So acceptance is really for those things that are not going to be altered and may be difficult for me to adapt to, but if I add that acceptance, that calm energy that can take me to a state of tranquility, again, accepting reality instead of fighting it, perhaps even inviting in curiosity about how we can gracefully navigate the challenge instead of resisting it. It's really a state of mind that can reduce the harmful effects of stress. And it is definitely possible to use more than one strategy simultaneously here. I've already kind of mentioned how that can happen. But for another example, while I might work as like an activist to bring an end to poverty, and I might go to legislature and propose new legislation that would alter the minimum wage, say example, I can work to alter that poverty by changing the minimum wage. but I can also accept at the same time that the change process may be slow and that I won't always get what I want. And then I can work with myself to adapt to those challenges by making sure I get enough sleep, spend time with the people I love, and get enough exercise every day. So we can do all of these or many, many at once. So even though we might not be able to stop the stressors of life from swirling all around us, we can use the 4 A's to better navigate even the stormiest of waters. Or, there's an alternative. But, this is why it's so important to pick the appropriate strategy, because if we don't, we might as well bang our head against the wall. And an example would be, if I want my spouse or my parent or my kid to change, that may not be in my control. And if I keep trying to change them, I might as well be banging my head on a hard surface. But if I adapt and accept the situation, then I'm really changing myself and I'm managing myself to manage my stress. So we want to look at all the options and see what is most appropriate. It takes practice. We all start somewhere, and sometimes we need to ask each other for help and get some guidance. So make sure you identify your support system and lean into it. Make connections with people in your program and support each other so you can be there for each other. I hope this was helpful. I hope that you can navigate the stressors in your lives and remember why you have chosen to pursue a degree or certificate here at SFCC. And if you find that you are seeking out help and you are working with your social network for support and things still aren't changing or getting better, I hope you will contact me or the other SFCC counselor, Janelle Johnson. If you need any support, whether it's for a personal issue, test anxiety, a relationship problem, or any other challenge, please feel free to contact us. Our contact information is right here on this slide. So do get in touch with us. We are here to support you. Our services are free and confidential, and we're here to help you succeed. Thank you for your time and attention.